Do you ever feel like the voices in your head won't shut up? As if all the chatter and all the stuff going on inside your brain actually really makes a difference in your life? Well, there's some people that say that you are your thoughts. You are the sum of the things you think, and what you think about all day is what you become. There's even Bible verses that says, "As a man thinketh, so is he." So, how do we look at this and take our brain into consideration when we have all these thoughts? The doctors say that there's about 60,000 thoughts going on in your brain every single day. That's a lot of thoughts. That's a lot of things to think about and a lot of things to keep track of. And if you're anything like I used to be, your brain goes and goes and goes, and your mind endlessly chatters about stuff, and you get stressed, and you feel bad, and you feel good, and you feel worried. And all these things are taking over your life, and you don't know what to do. So today what we're going to do is talk to you about what to do. We're going to talk to you about how to calm the thoughts in your brain. I remember many a sleepless night where I literally had no option in my own way of thinking other than to drink myself to sleep because my mind wouldn't shut up. Or I'd go to work and I couldn't get any work done unless I drank to shut my mind up. And nothing seemed to work. Drinking seemed to put a Band-Aid on the situation, only it was ignoring the big problem that was going on, which was maladaptive ways of thinking and inability to learn the things that I actually learned that helped me slow down my thoughts and slow down my mind. So, Terry, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I don't have too much chatter in my brain, but it's there, and that's okay. That's kind of the way I've learned how to deal with it.
All right, and
Yeah.
what was it like before? Did you notice a time when your mind would race and you couldn't do much, and then it got better, or you always kind of even Steven?
Before alcohol really dominated my life, I was pretty even Steven. I mean, yeah, I had sometimes I'd have the racing thoughts when something would go wrong or something like that, and then my mind would automatically go to worst case scenario, and that's really where the racing thoughts would really start to escalate. But as alcohol took over, those thoughts would happen more and more, and so much of it was just this life, this house of cards I was building with alcohol, of trying to put on this persona of being a together person, and inside just falling apart. And anytime anything would go wrong, or even when things wouldn't go wrong, I would be just dwelling on the negative aspects and the negative things that could happen. What if I got caught drinking and they made me quit? Or what if I get in trouble with the law for drinking and driving? Don't ever do that. But things like that, and I'd start to race and race and race. And even right after I got sober, and that first while, so those racing thoughts were there. I had to learn a way to control them. I had to learn some tools and some techniques to learn how to control those racing thoughts. And it's not a matter for me of getting rid of those thoughts. They're not going to go away. I'm going to be thinking about things and really, I might be focusing on the worst case scenario. And I mean, I think it's just a natural protective mechanism that we have. But what I've done is I've learned how to control it and accept that I'm going to have these thoughts, and they're pretty much 99% of the time not going to come through. So it's okay. It's okay to live like that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because before I learned a new way of living, which was a byproduct of sobriety, I didn't even plan on it. I thought I would just have to deal with and have to cope and have to struggle with getting rid of the thoughts. And I realized that that wasn't the case at all. What happened was I needed to learn that the thoughts didn't really matter. I would spend my
Yeah.
days looking at, oh, hey, I'm going to have this thought. I better write it down because it's going to be the next big idea. Or I have this thought and I need to act on it right now. Or I have this feeling and I need to do something about it. And what happened is I was living at a very base level. And when we live at a base level, we're looking at what I want, what I need, what I have to have, how I need to feel. And we're never really living in the moment. And in the moment, we have to understand that right now, we're probably okay. Probably all right. I mean, everything's probably as planned. And we need to stop looking at what society puts on us as good or bad or a struggle or whatever it is, right? We need to start looking at, okay, I'm just living and these are part of it. Where we had before, these things were my identity, right? I was this person, and if I wasn't that person, then I felt bad. And what I learned was that, one, my brain isn't as smart as I think it is. Right? It's something, and we go back. I mean, if you've ever met people in my family, you'll realize that we think we're the smartest people on the earth, right? And we're also very important. And we also have a lot of mental illness. So we have to look at that and be like, okay, there's kind of some correlations there. But we have to realize it. And if you had met me 10 years ago and you said, hey, I notice these traits about you, and you're a little bit narcissistic, you talk too much, your brain races too fast, and you think you're too damn smart, it would have been go time. It would have been time to get in a brawl because I cared about what you thought about me. And I had to think about it. I'd have to go think about, do you believe what this guy thinks of me? Terry said these things about me. When in actuality, what does it matter? Terry's over there in Seattle doing whatever Seattle people do. I'm over here in Florida doing what Florida people do, which apparently is, walk around and look for gators or something. That's what people think. But we have to understand that it doesn't really matter. The key is, and I remember years ago, I was driving in the motorhome with my dad, and I got a little motorhome in remembrance of my dad and the motorhome trips. But this was one of them trips from back in 2013 when I was still drinking. And my anxiety and my thoughts were at an all-time high. I had to drink myself into oblivion so that the thoughts would stop. This is how bad my thought, overactive brain, my voices in my head, this is how big they were. And I can't even describe it to people who've never had this issue because it doesn't make sense. They say, what are you talking about? I said, I don't know what I'm talking about. There's a bunch of voices in my head. Luckily, they were all me, but they were different things that I was thinking of. And I get on this motorhome trip, and my anxiety's at an all-time high. I don't want to be in this trip. I don't want to be in an RV. My brothers are doing all kinds of drugs that I didn't even know existed, and it's just a wreck. And he told me, he said, hey, if you're anxious, what you need to do is two things. One, focus on something outside. Focus on something outside of me. It was a little helpful, but then I'd be like, tree. Money grows on trees. I need to make money. I'm going broke. What the hell's the matter with me? I need to open up my laptop and I start working. This is how my life would go. And he would also say, hey, you know what you need to do is when a thought comes up that's reoccurring, say to yourself, I don't think about that anymore. Okay, these were helpful in the moment. But later on, I realized, and I think my dad realized this too later on, as his illness progressed, he learned some things about life that, unfortunately, stubborn people like us, we got to go through some difficult things, and we learn stuff. And one of the things that I learned was your mind is a wonderful slave, but a terrible master. If you let your mind run the show and you look at everything as gospel truth coming out of your brain, then yeah, you're going to want to listen to everything your brain has to say. But now I realize I don't have to. And instead of fighting it and looking for things outside or trying to combat it with new sayings, what I do is I just realize that it's going to be okay. Is what you think about in the next 10 minutes going to make or break your life? If you lived like me back then, it would. I get in a fight with my wife, and I need to decide right now, do I divorce or do I stay? We need to decide. We need to go and figure these out. And everything was a life or death situation, even though it wasn't. Funny enough, the one thing that was life or death, I wasn't thinking about solving, which was my alcoholism. And that's when we need to realize, hey, my thoughts weren't exactly the best thing back then. And when I also realized that I have the ability to put new thoughts in my brain by listening to stuff, by reading, by understanding new things, because as Alan Watts says, a person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts. And the thoughts are in the English language, which I didn't even invent, so they're not even my own thoughts. Now, I like the English language. It helps me understand things. I can ask someone for coffee and I get it. But again, it's the software, it's not life. And throughout life, we go through looking at trees and we say tree, which is a thought. A tree is a thing. A thought is not a thing. I can't experience a tree the minute I call it a tree because now I'm thinking about the thought or the description of tree rather than experiencing it. And when I listen to someone, if I sit here thinking about what I'm going to say, or I sit and think about my business, is that actually helping? So Terry, what do you think about all this stuff? I know I'm probably like way over on the bat crap crazy kind of person. You're more even Steven. But what do you think about that? Have you ever dealt with that kind of stuff?
Well, you definitely have some deep thoughts there, but good points. I love all your points, and for me, yeah, it's trying to keep the thoughts really simple. But some of the tools that you already mentioned, like reading, reading is a really good thing to do, and reading. Not reading the Facebook news articles or stuff like that, but you know, some productive reading, like you were mentioning Alan Watts. That's a great direction to go. Reading is very helpful for me in focusing my thoughts, and not even necessarily something like Alan Watts, just a good novel to take your mind off of something, to go in a different direction and get you away from those thoughts. I do still find that my mind will wander towards some of those negative thoughts that I'm having while I'm reading, but then I just kind of have to concentrate and go back and reread that section because I'm like, I was thinking about this the whole time. Like, I forgot that whole page. I don't even know what it said, so let me go back and try and get that. And you know, that's a really important tool that I can use. You know, a lot of people they really believe in journaling or writing and writing down their thoughts, because for me especially, you know, I get these thoughts, but it's not just one thought I'll be focusing on. My mind will be going 100 different directions all at the same time, it seems. And so none of these thoughts I can really focus on and try and analyze a little bit and just, you know, ask myself, why am I focusing on this? A lot of times, you know, you can journal these things, write these things down that you're thinking, and then look at them objectively and find out, well, why am I stressed about this? What am I afraid of? Because that's usually what a lot of these racing thoughts are all about, is that fear of what might happen. And so writing it down allows me to focus on each item individually, and then from there, what I can do, if I need to, if it's something that's really, you know, dominating my life, I can talk to somebody about it. It doesn't have to necessarily be like a therapist or something. I mean, that can be helpful, but just talking to somebody that might have an objective opinion, or somebody that's close to you, even though they may not have as objective an opinion, but you know, somebody that you can get some good answers from, or at least they're just listening and you're getting it off your chest, these thoughts. And you know, another one that I've seen a lot of you in the chats talk about before is exercise, and for me that's huge. For me, exercise is a really good way to take care of those racing thoughts. Yesterday I went and explored a new area where I moved here 6 weeks ago, and I took this bike ride and I rode into town, and you know, it was all new to me. I had to avoid hitting a deer because there's no people out where I am there, but there are deer. But you know, I was focusing on the ride and focusing on, you know, the surroundings, and trying to familiarize myself and trying not to get lost, which I did. But you know, I was able to get back on track. But that's exercise, a really good method for taking care of a lot of these racing thoughts, and that's a huge one for me. And there's a couple other things that I do here and there, and you know, like gratitude, being grateful. I've been doing a few things this last couple days, and that thankfulness for what I do have, it's come up a whole bunch of times, and I agree, it's a huge tool for me. Being thankful that I am able to sit here on a webinar and help people. I hope. At least that's what I'm trying to do. But try being thankful that I have what I have. I mean, materialistic things, they don't matter as much to me anymore. But I mean, I'm sure if I lost it all, they would matter a lot. So I guess they probably do. But being grateful for what I have, the family I have, the family I had, even though I lost my parents in the recent years, being thankful that I had those parents and that they gave me a roof over my head and a pretty good life.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I use.
Well, and I think it's important too not to undercut the difference, because a lot of times we're like, okay, yeah, if you took everything away, I would probably not be as happy as I am today. But when I look at apples to apples, I lived in California in a really nice house, and I was miserable. And now I learned to live with less, and I'm a lot happier. And I think it's interesting to look at because there was growth there. And sometimes they're little steps. Sometimes it's little baby steps of growth. Like someone says they've been sober 19 days, or Amy, 41 days.
Yeah.
Al, or 19 months for Al, 41
Yeah.
days. But like you look at someone like Amy who's been sober 41 days, there's some progress. The first progress is you don't drink. I mean, not drinking for 41 days for an alcoholic is game changing, life changing, altering.
Yeah.
And it's easy to go and look and be like, well, the guy in the back, he's been sober for 32 years. Well, good for him. I've been sober, I don't know, 8. That's what I got. And we have to learn to be okay and look at the progress that we've made. And it's interesting because once you've been sober for a while, you'll notice the old thoughts creep back in. You'll be sitting there and you'll be like, hey, I was thrown for a loop. Like a couple months ago when I was dealing with the passing of my father, it was difficult. I was traveling back from California to Florida, Florida to California, time changes, not eating, not taking care of myself. I wasn't able to have my ritual smoothie every day and my apple before bed. And I was thrown for a loop, and there was a lot of emotions and sadness and, anger and family and things going on. And I noticed I was thrown for a loop. And I'm like, oh man, I get down on myself. Hey, what am I doing? But then I realized, hey, if this was 8 years ago, I would have been at the bar. I would have probably gone to the bar, bought the bar, and drank the bar. That's what I would have done. And I would have been miserable. And I wouldn't have been able to spend time with the people that I love. And I wouldn't be able to deal with things rationally. And so we look at the progress and we look at what happens. Because now, if I miss, like one of the days, the only flight was 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. So I was flying all night and, trying to sleep on planes just doesn't work. It doesn't work. I don't care who you are. It just does. You're bouncing and up in the air and, it doesn't work. And thoughts creep in and I get home and I'm depleted and my mind's racing. And I start to get angry at people. And then I realize I'm human. I can forgive myself. And my thoughts stop as if by magic. It's interesting because it's like that person in your family. We all got one. They're the loud person. They're the one that needs to be heard. They need to be heard. And all they need is, someone to go up and be like, I understand you. I hear you. But in reality, what we all do is ignore them. And they go and find someone else to annoy. That's how it works, right? Because we don't want to get all vulnerable and stuff. So we just ignore them and they go away. Same thing with your brain and your thoughts. If you stop paying attention to them, you're going to notice how few you start to have about those topics that send you through a loop. And we talk about this all the time on this channel. There's the working of the mind versus the content. Now, I had a lot of content. I was dealing with my dad passing. I was dealing with family. I was dealing with, I don't know who played the cruel joke where the people grieving have to deal with all the paperwork, but whoever invented that needs to rethink the way they thought of that, because it's just insult to injury and it's so much stuff going on. And then I don't sleep and my mind's going a mile a minute. But now I understand that's the working of my mind when I don't get sleep. It's what happens
Yeah.
Back then, I'd drink alcohol and I'd be like, why am I depressed? Because you drank a freaking depressant. Oh no, that's not it. You don't understand. It's chemical. And when I went to rehab, I'm so glad we found the rehab we did, because we had this 65-year-old tough guy who was like, it's chemical, dumbass. You drink a chemical, you get a chemical response. That's what happens. Same thing with depleted emotions or stress or not eating right. You wonder why people in America are on every disorder of the brain or every issue. They're so unhappy and they can't get their thought life right because you're going to the McDonald's. There's no nutrients. Sorry, I apologize for McDonald's if you're watching this. You make fine burgers. There we go. I think that'll absolve us. But you have to look at that and you have to understand there's a lot of factors at play. And alcohol is at play. Stress is at play. Screen time. I mean, how many people you're watching screen time all day, every day? That affects your brain. Look at how it is. I mean, they're actually taking in the psychology manual, the DSRM, and they're putting in internet addiction. They're putting in mental disorders because of screen time. And if you've had children in this day and age, you know what this is like. Like when me and Terry grew up, things were different. I mean, probably a little difference between the two of us, but it was the same. We didn't have the internet back then. And, you know, we'd get teased at school. We'd go home. Everyone forgot about it the next day. Now it's like you're famous for getting teased on the Instagram. And they keep teasing you after you leave school. I'm like, hey, man, this is like bullying on a whole nother level. I don't know how people deal with it. But we wonder why we're so messed up. And really all you need to do is say, okay, kids, take the phone, put it on the counter, and you can have it when you go to school tomorrow, because really all it's for is for me to figure out where you're at. That's what it's for. It's not for all this other stuff. But when we start to lose sight of how these things manipulate our brain and how our thoughts are connected to them, and I don't know if you caught on to this or if you heard this in rehab, our guy was saying, your mind is like a lens and you get what you focus on. And he repeated it over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I was like, buddy, I see you with your PhDs in other countries and your 5 languages. I don't know where it was. Like they took this guy from like PhD land and brought him to the rehab. And I was like, okay, that was kind of like the world being like, hey, Marcus, you're not smart. But I thought I was smart. And I thought I knew what that meant. Oh, yeah, you got to focus on the right stuff. No. What that means is you are literally like a horse with the blinders on. And if I go squirrel, you're going to start thinking about squirrels. And if I go on Instagram or Facebook and I see what Mary and John just bought, then I say, oh, why don't I have one of those? When you didn't even think about that 5 minutes ago. Your mind was distracted by this stuff. And what we need to realize is that's a curse. That is a curse of our mind. But it's also the biggest blessing. Because now I can choose to point my mind where I want my mind to go. And what happens is over time, by repetition, by saying, hey, these thoughts don't matter as much as I thought they did.
Yeah. You just covered a lot of subjects there. Anyways, the mind, for me, that's definitely true. Before I was able to finally quit drinking, I had done what many of us alcoholics do, quit drinking many, many times. And, that entire time, I would focus on quitting drinking, the drink. That's what I would focus on. Okay, I'm going to limit myself today. And tomorrow I'll go even a little bit less and a little bit less. I'm going to moderate. I'd try all the different things that we try. Okay, I'm only going to drink on the weekend. Okay, I'm only going to drink in the evening. I do all these things, focusing on drinking. I was not able to quit. And, finally, when I stopped focusing on the quitting drinking, now, don't get me wrong. I had to focus on sobriety, and there were things I had to do, especially to get through the detox stage. That was very, very important. That was the most important thing. But as I went on in sobriety, I started to focus more instead of on the drinking, the alcohol aspect, I focused on changing my mindset, changing the way I do things, focusing on sobriety, doing sober activities, talking to other sober people, not hanging out with those in the alcohol area places. I mean, we can't do that for the rest of our lives. We're not going to be able to avoid alcohol, but focusing on other things. And that's what really helped me stay sober, really. I mean, and earlier in what you were just talking about, you were talking about how you took the mobile home trip and how it really threw you for a loop. And I hear you. That's something that a lot of us, well, all of us, we go through that. And I learned how to focus my mind on sobriety when I first got sober, and I started to develop these habits and this way of life. And I kind of got in this nice comfort zone. And that's what I did, and I'm pretty much a kind of a consistent guy in the way I do things, and it's a blessing in one way because I'm able to stay sober that way, but it's also a curse because if I want to change something big in my life, it's very difficult for me to do because I am kind of set in my ways, so I really have to put a lot of effort into that. But with that being said, being set in my ways, it allowed me to stay sober. And here we are, I'm all, coming up on 8 years sober, and I did this huge move. So obviously lots of things changed, and many things changed. I go to meetings most days of the week, and I have my sobriety program that I do, and I do it on a daily basis. And when I started to do this moving thing, I had to actually move into my trailer in my driveway with my dog, so I couldn't leave him alone in there. There's all these little factors that I had to start to take into account, so I couldn't go to I couldn't run my sobriety program the way I had been for so many years. And that threw me for a loop. But what did I have to do? I had to, once again, focus on the big picture, focus on the sobriety. I had to focus on, okay, what am I going to do today towards my sobriety? I can't just sit here and watch my iPad TV or whatever. I need to do something. I need to be productive towards my sobriety. And so I started to figure out things that I could do. And a lot of it was the things I don't like to do, which is call people on the telephone and talk to them. Oh man, I don't like doing that, but I did it. Because it's, sobriety is, Al said it just a little while ago, it's the most important thing. That has to be the most important thing. Without the sobriety, I'm not going to have anything else. So that's one of the things that I had to do. And, moving up here to, not Seattle, Eastern Washington. but anyways, see, I'm focusing on the wrong thing. But moving up here, that things it's not so easy. I can't just drive 3 minutes out the door and meet a bunch of other sober alcoholics for an hour. It doesn't work that way here. So what do I have to do? I got to figure out what to do. Okay, I can do Zoom, I can call people again, things like that. And focus on the right thing, not focus on the cannabis shop that's a block away or the liquor store that things like that. Not focus on those things. Okay, that's for somebody else. That's fine. Focus on the good things in life and the fact that I have hundreds of hiking trails within minutes of my front door, and there's deer in my backyard, which is kind of a pain when you have a dog. But the cool thing, the rabbits that my dog loves to chase. So all that stuff. Focus on the good, the fun. The fact that, it's I have a roof over my head. Simple things. So, that's, go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we look at what it is. It's funny because, I don't know what it is, the Constitution or something. I didn't get that far in school. But one of those America documents says you have the right to the pursuit of happiness, which is interesting because it's it doesn't say happiness. It says the pursuit of happiness, which, what else would you expect from a consumer-driven culture? The pursuit of happiness. Keep buying shit and you'll be happy. And what we realize is that happiness and contentment is right now. It's right now. You have it right now. Like, Terry could be mad. He could be like, hey, I wanted a bigger house, and I wanted to be in Seattle. Or I could say, hey, I want to live on the beach, or whatever it is. And I can wait and postpone my happiness and postpone my contentment by being angry about what I don't have now, or what I did wrong, or what I don't like, or whatever. And it's interesting because in life, sometimes drastic things make you realize what really matters. And I noticed that with my dad because, my dad, we would, it was interesting. He was an interesting guy. I loved him, but it was interesting. And sometimes we didn't see eye to eye, and sometimes we didn't get along, and sometimes we just plain were like, I don't really want to hang out much anymore. But towards the end, I said, I'm looking at this, and I want to spend time with my dad because this is what I have. And I think that's why it's important with sobriety, the first thing to be acceptance, because we accept where we're at and what we have. This is what I have. I'm going to enjoy it because there is good in it. And in life, your mind is like a lens. You can find good and bad in everything.
Yeah.
Everything you can find good and bad in. And when you start to understand that, you can start to look for the good rather than the bad. Now, looking for the bad sometimes is a protection. I'm going to look for the bad so that I am protected from getting hurt. Fair enough. Fair enough. But let's look at what the hurt is. Are we talking about, like, someone might yell at me? Or are we talking about, like, I'm going to get hurt, traumatized? If you're going to get traumatized, yeah, maybe guard yourself a little bit. Or a lot. But when it comes to most things, as it did in my life, a lot of the things weren't that big. And I'm glad I was able to get past that stuff with my dad because then it was like, okay, I can spend time and I can understand and I can love this person. Just the way he is. And I stopped asking for him to be the way I wanted him to be. And I said, you're the way you are. And I accept that. And I care about that. And I love that. When you're in marriage, I'm going to accept the way you are. Now, this doesn't mean allow yourself to get hurt. Like, I'm not going to accept the guy who stole from me by giving him my wallet. No. I'm going to accept, okay, this is who he is. So we'll put the stuff up, but I'll still hang out with him, if that's what you want to do. Metaphorically, I don't advise inviting thieves into your house. Probably not a good idea. But when we look at these things and we say, okay, I can accept what is, because this is what is and this is what we have. The quicker I accept it, the quicker I can live with it. And when I stop postponing my contentment or my happiness, then I realize that everything I ever wanted is right here. But society doesn't make it that way. That's why when you go to the club or the bar or the restaurant, there's that little table with the rope around it. And you go, I'll bet dinner's way better behind that rope. Really? Is it? It's just a rope. I'll bet the dancing is way better behind the rope. I'll bet the grass is so much greener on the other side. Well, I kind of like my grass. It's a little charred in some areas because Florida does get hot. But I like my grass. It's pretty cool. Half of it's like weeds. And the guy comes and he's like, do you want us to kill the weeds? I'm like, no, because then it'll be kind of barren. They don't bother me. I'll be okay with a few weeds. It's okay. And I start to realize that I accept where I'm at. And I accept who's in my life. And I accept that sometimes my thoughts race. And sometimes it's hard to shut them up. But it's a lot easier when I don't take them seriously. I accept that there's my brain doing its thing. Like, how many health conditions have I worried about that didn't really come? I don't think anyone can have all the stuff I worried about. And my worrying didn't make me any better. Like, I didn't become some Adonis of health because I worried. No, I actually gave myself more stress and probably got worse off. And when we start to realize, hey, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. Indria, very interesting. I completely understand that. She says, or he, I'm not sure, are there any other artists here? I was stuck in this stupid thought process where I thought drinking made my workflow better, but I realize now it's not true. So true. Yes. We think that drinking to shut off our mind and our judgment of our stuff and our work is going to help, and it doesn't help. So yeah, I feel you there. That is a tough rut to get out of. Um, yeah.
Yeah, even on a more basic level than that, I remember, going to the bars and shooting pool, and so many people I've talked to that, drinkers would say this as well. And my thing was is I can stay on a pool table and do really well if I start the game sober. Then I'm okay to get as drunk as I want, and I'll still play good. So I think I would play better when I was drinking, as long as I started sober. But I've heard many people say that, oh yeah, I shoot much better when I'm drinking. No, it's because everybody else is getting drunker too. Mm-hmm. You're just all at the same level. It's just who's better at that same level.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're an alcoholic, you have more tolerance, so it's not going to affect you as much. But I don't know. I don't know if that's a good comparison or not. But
well, and I think both of us, and you let me know if this works for you. I think both of us can say there's nothing that alcohol made better in my life. I wasn't more creative. I wasn't funnier. I did laugh at myself more, but in a way that was like, I'm an idiot, right? Nothing was better.
Right.
Like if I go and I do work now, because I used to literally, I feel your pain. I would take a box of beer or a handle of whatever I drank to work, and I thought it was my suitcase because I work at home and no one judges they actually encouraged me. Not my home people, but the other people. They're like, hey, you get drunk and make money. That's cool. And I was like, yeah, this is cool, till it wasn't. I didn't make better business deals when I was drinking. It didn't enhance my life at all. Nothing. It did help with anxiety and shutting off my thoughts, but only because it's the best I had at the time. Like I was sitting there and they're like, hey, here's your options, crappy or really good. And all I saw was crappy, so that's what I took. But now I realize it could be really good. And it can be really good because I don't have to slow my thoughts down. Just let them be. And naturally they will slow. But if you try, it's going to keep going. It's like trying to meditate. You ever try to meditate and you're like, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to think of nothing. Here we go. I'm doing really good thinking about nothing. This is really great. I read this in a book about meditating, and now I'm literally thinking about nothing. And you're like, wait a minute. Did I just think about thinking about nothing? Well, what if it didn't matter? What if the words your brain told you didn't matter? What if they weren't meant to be taken seriously? I mean, sure, there's some, like stop when the car in front of you is stopping. That's a good thought. I like that one. Although my car's doing a pretty good job of, covering for me when I don't have that handled. And we start to realize that, think about it. Over the last month, let's do the math here. We'll use Google to help us with this math. So 60,000 times 30. So last month, or let's say this month, 28 days. So 28 days in this month so far. So for the entire month of April.
1.8 million.
What's that?
1.8 million.
I got 1.68. There we go.
Oh. Okay.
I think you did.
Never mind.
You did 30. I did 20.
A lot of thoughts.
Yeah. So 1.8 million thoughts have gone through your brain in the month of April. I want you to tell me how many of them amounted to something. If I'm honest with myself, I'm going to say less than 1,000. And that's being pretty generous. That means 30 thoughts a day amounted to something. No, that's too much. I'm going to say maybe 300. Maybe. I was like, I want to go eat some food, and I'll take my kids with me. That was fun. That was good. That's a good thought. But most of them, like 1.7997 million of those thoughts didn't mean jack shit. They could have came and gone. But you got all stressed and you got all flustered. And you got all crazy about them. They didn't even matter. Like this morning, went for a walk with my wife. We were talking about investment ideas, and and different things like that. And we talked the whole walk for an hour. Right? That's a lot of thoughts, a lot of chatter, a lot of, hey, I think this and you think that. Did anything good come of it? Well, probably something we could have solved with about 2 thoughts. But if I take them all seriously and everything's crazy, then I'm going to go crazy, which I did. That's where this took me. Drinking and overactive thoughts made me crazy and took me to the mental hospital and the real hospital because I took it all seriously. It's like, really, if you look at that, like, repeat that to yourself. You want something to think about. When your mind goes crazy and you can't shut it off, say, okay, I'll grab on to 1 out of 1,000 thoughts. Or 1 out of 10,000. Right, so let's say, okay, you got 60,000 thoughts a day. If I take 1 out of 1,000, that would be 60. So I'll let you have about 5 thoughts an hour that you can grab onto. And that's still shooting for the moon. That's a lot of thoughts. So that's cool. I could let them pass. Like, I could take a break this entire hour. I could save them up and be like, hey, I'm just going to save up. At the end of the day, I'll take my 1,000. But right now, I don't have to think about anything right now. Like, you just watched us. Some of you guys watched us for 42 minutes so far. You didn't have to think of anything. We thought of plenty of things for you. I think we'll be okay. There's a little bit of surplus, some crazy thoughts, but does that make sense? Is this making sense to everyone? Where it's like, wait a minute, we're skewed. And it's what I call riding the waves. You see those people in the stock market. In 2008 was the first big stock market crash when I was an adult and able to pay attention. And the news flipped out and people were going crazy. And back in the day, I'm sure we had some in 2008, people were jumping out of windows. Because numbers on paper changed. It's the funniest thing. Alan Watts says it beautifully. And if you don't listen to Alan Watts, listen to Alan Watts. He's great. Now, I will disclaimer it. Alan Watts was big into psychedelic drugs and stuff. And I think he died drinking. So for sobriety, we're not gonna do sobriety stuff. But he does teach a lot of things. And one of the things that he said, which I forgot now, what did he say? I lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
That's all right.
With all those thoughts, and I'm sure I'm right there with that 1.8 million thoughts in a month. But I think the biggest thing for me is just accepting the fact that they're going to be there, and I think that's huge. I'm going to think. I'm going to think about the negative things, and I'm not going to fight it. They don't have to come true. They're probably not going to come true. I'm not going to focus on them. I'm going to focus on where I am right now. Things are okay. What am I going to do, in the next hour? What am I going to do for the rest of the day? I'm going to try to enjoy myself, try to be thankful. And I think that's huge for me, to just control those racing thoughts. Sure, absolutely. I do have those nights occasionally where I wake up and I'm just thinking about too much stuff. And I can't go back to sleep. That happened a couple weeks ago. But that's how often it happens now. Before, it was like every single night. Now I'm saying that, it was a couple weeks ago it happened. Before that, been a couple months or so. Maybe not quite that long before that, because I was in the middle of the move and, worried about the moving truck coming, things like that. But just accepting that it's going to happen. I think that's a lot of what sobriety's all about. I've had to accept the fact that I'm an alcoholic, and I have to do something about that. If I was just going to try and fight it, I tried to fight it. That didn't work. So just accepting it and, okay, what do I need to do next to stay sober?
Absolutely.
And that's what I did.
And Ben paid attention to me more than I paid attention to me. And he said I was mentioning the 2008 crash. Yeah, we were talking about how numbers on paper sent people through the ringer, but it bounced back. It's actually better. The numbers are better now than they were in 2008. So if you went to sleep from 2008 to 2016, 15, 14, when it started coming back, you wouldn't have noticed anything. But people stressed out for 5 years, freaked out. Oh, what am I going to do? Just sit. That's all you got to do is sit. I remember my brother was flying somewhere, and he's a nervous flyer. And he's like, Mark, I've never flown by myself. What do I do? I said, Greg, there's a chair. You sit. That's all you have to do. The pilot takes care of everything else. They'll actually even bring you a soda and some peanuts and maybe a sandwich. But all you have to do is sit. Because guess what? Once you're in the air, you can't control anything. Nothing. I don't know how to fly a plane. I don't know how to do anything. There's nothing I can do. And once you realize that most of these thoughts you're thinking about, there's nothing you can do. You just sit and you let it happen. And it's funny because Alan Watts tells this story that I was going to mention earlier, where he says, there's this idea of a work scene. And these people are construction workers. And they're sitting there and they got piles of wood, they got hammers, they got nails, they got screw guns, they got all kinds of stuff. All the stuff that you need to build a house, concrete, whatever you need. And the boss comes to work one day and he says, guys, pack it up and go home. We're all out of inches. And they say, what do you mean we're all out of inches? We got hammers, we got nails, we got wood, we got everything. We want to go to work. He says, we can't. We are all out of inches. And we realize that a lot of this stuff, like money and status and what people think of us, is the same as inches. It's a unit of measurement. Oh, how many people liked this? How many people thought it was cool on Facebook? Last night, I was talking to my brothers on a group chat, and we went to a concert, and I said, hey, we're at this concert. No one said anything. And I was like, why don't they care? Well, why should I care if they care? I went there so that I could enjoy it. And we start to look at it because our brains are programmed in a certain way to crave a certain thing. And sometimes we need to sit back and laugh and say, I'm all out of inches. That's all it is. It's a unit of measure. All I'm doing is using these things to feel a certain way, but I can get that feeling whether I have those things or not. There are people that have no money who feel happier than you've ever felt. There are people that have tons of money who are more happier than you. There are people that have tons of money that are miserable. There's people that have no money that are miserable. And when we start to realize that all of the feelings and all of the things that you want have been inside you all along, life becomes so much better. Because then we don't have to think and play the game of inches and status and this and that. And our happiness and our contentment isn't tied to something else. And then we can get it wherever we're at. And I think that's important to look at.
Yeah, and sometimes we need to feel sadness. Sometimes we do feel anger, and we have to work through it. And with knowing the fact that I have this strength and power inside me, I don't have to let other people control those feelings. I can control those feelings, well, sort of. I mean, sadness, anger, those are difficult to control. But at least I can work through them in a productive way instead of a destructive way. And I think that's important. That really helps me in sobriety. And, in sobriety, yes, the most important thing for me is to not drink. I don't want to drink anymore. It's going to make me go down that hole. And what am I? But more importantly for me in sobriety is I want to be, relatively happy. Basically, I want to be serene, have a nice, smooth, happy life, I guess is the way I'm trying to describe it. But that's what I want to do. So learning how to control these thoughts and the emotions, mostly fear, that these thoughts give me, and knowing that I have the power, that's what really helps me a lot. And that's one of the big keys to my sobriety is, we've said it before, I've built this life that I don't have to run from anymore, and I want to keep it going that way because I like it. It's good. Well, most of the negative things are gone.
And I think, too, one of the things that we should leave off with is it's not the thoughts that are bad, it's what you choose to dwell on.
Yeah.
Because what you're going to realize is thoughts are like a river, and the river is polluted by whatever you're consuming. Like 1,000 years ago, people didn't think about what car they drove. They were thinking about like horses and crap. And so we look at that, we're like, well, wait a minute, now I'm thinking about all this other stuff that maybe I don't need to dwell on it because maybe it's not as big as I thought. And what's going to happen is what you consume and what you are around is going to affect your river of thoughts. And the river is going to be like, oh, hey, I'm thinking about business, so there's business thoughts in there. Terry likes to ride bikes up mountains. So he's got mountains and bikes in his river of thoughts. And puppies and dogs and stuff like that. And so whatever you put in that river is what's going to be your options. Think of thoughts as options. Oh, hey, I got to think about that. I can pick that one up. I'll let that one swim by. I'll let this go by. And you start to take over, and instead of jumping in the river and being like, oh, what the hell is this? Oh, my God, why? You're standing up and you're going, all right, well, that fish is kind of weird. I don't think I'll pick that one up. That's kind of cool. Oh, I like that one. There's an Alan Watts thought. Or there's something Terry said. And we'll start to realize that these thoughts don't control us. The big myth is that your thoughts control you. They don't. And that brings us to the end of our show, which, if you want to support what we're doing, check out TalkSober.com. Over at TalkSober.com, you can join our recovery class. The recovery class is $27 a month. It helps support what we're doing here, and it also gives you access to all kinds of tools and PDFs and MP3s and all kinds of stuff to help you get and stay sober. This is not a replacement for like rehab or doctors. You should always go to the doctor when you're getting sober. But for the mindset stuff, if you resonate with what we're doing and you want to help share the message with other people, go to TalkSober.com, click the big yellow button. Now, you can also get a private sobriety call with Terry or myself or both of us. You can click there. That's like a one-time thing if you don't want a monthly one. You get links to the Talk Sober Show. There's a Facebook group and some other free stuff as well. If you want to support us, click the big yellow button there or this one below it. And then there's some other stuff free as well. Like our Facebook group is free. You can meet other sober people and follow up on what we're doing. But it would really help us out, and we'd appreciate it. And I think you'll get a lot of value if you do join our online recovery class, because it's got all kinds of stuff to help you out. So, any last-minute words, Terry?
Yeah, just to try to accept that voice inside. It's going to happen. Try to stay calm, and it's great to see you all. Congratulations on everybody, on your sobriety, everybody. I didn't get a chance to thank you or congratulate you individually, so good job. It's awesome. It's great to see all the regulars here and the new faces. Thanks.
Awesome. All right, guys, so go to TalkSober.com, help support the channel, check out the stuff, and we'll see you guys.